Welcome to Candid Catholic Convos, a program brought to you by the Catholic Diocese of Harrisburg. Our mission is to humanize the church and help you to grow in your faith, love, and understanding. I'm your host, Rachel Trochet, a cradle Catholic who's only human and struggled with faith on more than one occasion. Each week, you'll hear engaging, down-to-earth interviews and actionable strategies you can implement into your life with ease to help you grow closer to God. If you're ready to open your heart and step fully into the person God created you to be, then you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to episode 124 of Candid Catholic Convos. Last month, I got a group text from the sister of one of my best friends. She had an idea. She wanted to surprise her sister with a birthday girls' trip to the beach. Immediately, we got to work planning. And a couple of weeks ago, we actually made it happen. It was something of a small miracle that we made this work because we're all busy working moms. But the fact that we pulled it off and managed to surprise my friend in the process was priceless. I call these ladies my sisters from other misters because I don't have any biological sisters, but we've all been friends for almost 25 years. So in my mind, we're basically sisters. They've seen me at my best. They've seen me at my worst. We've stood by each other's sides on our wedding days, and our babies were all born within months of each other. Our friendship looks a lot different than it did in high school when we met. And it got me thinking about all the friends that I've had over the years. The ones that didn't stand the test of time. The ones that walked away when it got hard. The ones I walked away from. The friendships I outgrew, and the friends I left behind when I changed jobs or moved to another city. It also got me thinking about how challenging it is to make friends anymore, especially as a busy adult. How committing to and fostering a new relationship takes time and effort we may not have or be willing to give. And what about those lifelong friends? How do we maintain them in different seasons of life? Today, I'm sitting down with Zach Caney, the Director for Youth and Young Adult Ministry, to really dive into how we can cultivate and foster authentic friendships as busy adults. Zach, welcome back to Candid Catholic Convos. I know it's been a little while since we chatted. I think actually it was like this time last year that we sat down and talked over Zoom. So it's nice to be face-to-face and chat with you again about friendship and how to kind of manage them as adults.
Oh, yeah. Super happy to be here. Time number 3, trifecta. Yes. Like the three-peat, the hat trick. I got to ask you, who has like the record for like the most times on the podcast?
Oh,
it's got to be like
it's
50,
probably
right?
Sister Geraldine first and then followed by Father Sawicki.
Oh, really?
Think, yeah.
Wow. That second one. I mean, not that Father Swicky's I didn't think he'd be a good guest, but like, I mean, like what, I didn't know he was on it so often. I'm going to have to go back. I'm going to have to listen to the Father Swicky one.
He's very knowledgeable. So anytime I have like, especially like a history question, I'm like, Father Sawicki, I need your help. And he's on it. He is on it. And then I think followed by him would probably be, we have a couple spiritual directors who have made at least 2 appearances. And then Father Zeta, the exorcist, he's made at least 2.
Not a surprise there. Yeah.
Nope.
At least 2? Well,
at least 2.
Well, I'm above that.
You are. Look at you.
But listen to this here. Sister, I'm coming for you. I'm coming for your record. I don't know what it is. I'm going to find out what it is, and then I'm going to talk about something.
We got this. So, friendship. I want to talk about why we have friends and kind of like what the point of us having friends is. I mean, because it's not necessarily like a spelled out requirement to like be a human being. You have to have friends, but it does make life a little easier, don't you think?
Yeah, I would say so. I don't think it's spelled out like there's some sort of order or command that you have to have friends, or it's like a sin not to have friends or any of that stuff. But I think the way life is, I think there's almost like a natural what do I want to say? Like a natural inclination that we should have friends. I mean, even within scripture, there's a lot of notations about the importance of friends and how good friends are. So like, for example, in Proverbs, which actually speaks a lot about friends and how one makes good friends, like the importance of friends. But they said a sweet friendship refreshes the soul, which I think that is true. You know, this idea of like friendship is important. And then, of course, we have in Paul's epistles, he talks about the body, the many parts, one body. And we talk about how you have like the arm can't say to the leg, like, I don't need you, or like, the one finger to the other, like, those aren't the exact body parts that are said, but this idea is that we're not all the same part of the body, but we all can't be a body unless like we work together. So God made us to be communal beings. I mean, God himself is a communal being. He's three persons, one God. He's not just one God that's one God. He's three persons, one God, and we're made in his image and likeness. I think so. Even that in itself is meant to say we are not made to be alone. We're meant to be a part of a close community, like a tight-knit community, a community that is like equally separate and one at the same time. I know Aristotle once said that friendship is like two beings sharing like the same soul, or two bodies sharing the same soul. And I think there's a saint that described it similarly. I don't remember who it was. It might have been Ambrose, but something very similar, this idea of two beings sharing a soul, which we know is not theologically accurate. Like, you don't actually share your soul with another human being. You are a separate soul. But it's like this concept of that connection, of kind of like that three persons in one God, this idea of like this unity, but also distinction at the same time. So I think there's a lot in our faith life that inclines us towards friends, just the way we were created and the way we were made. So that's why I mean, it might not be a hard, fast, spelled out rule in the 10 Commandments, thou shalt have friends, but I think God wants us to have friends. I mean, God created us, essentially to be his friends. I mean, not in the sense that like it's like God needs friends. God doesn't need friends. Like God is complete in himself. But God like wanted to be in communion with us. He created us to be in communion with us. So like the idea that we exist, I think, is even like an inclination that we need other people, that we need friends. If the God of the universe was all like, hey, it's not good to be alone, or it's like this idea of having people to love and be loved. Like, I think that's really important. And then even in the garden, you have Adam and Eve, it's not good for the man to be alone. And that's not just in romantic love. I think that's in life in general.
Yeah, in platonic love and friendship kind of love. So why is it important to have good friendships? And can we talk a little bit about what makes a friendship good versus bad or toxic?
Okay. So, this is a very complicated question, I think. It's important to have good friends. And by good, good's such a nebulous word. Like, like what does good mean?
Yeah.
But what I think good comes down to in terms of friendship is good friends make each other better. So another excerpt from Proverbs is iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. So this idea is like a sword can't sharpen itself. Like, you need another piece of metal or stone to like sharpen it. So this idea of when we work together, it's like we sharpen each other, we make each other better. And so that's another reason I think we need friends. But good friends make each other better. Good friends will each other's good. That's like what makes like a true friendship, I think. So like that makes a friendship good. So someone who wants you to be better. It's not just I want to be better. It's like I want to make you better. So this idea of teamwork, of this equality in the form of wanting to make each other better, hold each other accountable. So in all, I think that's what makes ultimately a good friend. We talk about love, and like love by definition in our faith is willing the good of the other as other. And the greatest good we can will for the other is to, be a saint, to get to heaven. So this idea of making each other better, I think, is really important. I was a swimmer back in my day. I was a competitive swimmer all the way through college. And I can say, like, for example, you always want to train with other people versus by yourself. Training by yourself is really hard because it's really hard to push yourself. But when you have somebody swimming next to you and you're like, I want to beat them, or like, I want to go faster. It's not always like I want you to not succeed, because it's like, oh, if like they just swim slow, then they're not pushing you too. It's like, I want you to be close to me. I want us to be like, have a close race. I want us to like go fast, like back and forth. And so like slowly but surely, like we're inching further forward and faster because we're just both pushing each other, versus like one person like completely dominates. And then like that doesn't help both people. So this idea of having that motivation, I think it's the same in life, in the spiritual life, like this idea of having someone beside you, like walking beside you, like motivating you, pushing you, not to be like, I want to win life and I want you to lose life. It's like, let's both be as fast and best and as virtuous as we can be. So that, I think, is a good friendship. So that idea of we make each other better, that is a good friendship. So what then makes up a bad friendship would essentially be, I guess, what's toxic is that inequality in friendship, that like one always takes, one always gives type of thing, of like maybe just like as I described, it's like, I always want to dominate you. Like, I always want to be the best. I always want to put you down. You always have to lose. I always have to win. Stand on your shoulders.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that, I think, would constitute a bad friendship. Another thing, which, I mean, we're going to probably talk about more of this when we talk about how to make good friendships, like, or how to form good friendships. But friends that try to possess one another, that's the thing. Friendship is a gift. It's like, even like in romantic relationships, you give of yourself back and forth. You don't try to possess the other person. You don't try to grasp or to cling or to force. And I think that sort of makes it a bad friendship, when one or the other person, they're trying to possess the other person, or they're trying to cling too tightly, rather than, sometimes distance is what's best. So like willing the good of the other, sometimes like distance is what's best. But if like you rage against that because it's like about you, it's like, oh, I need you close, like for me, then that's, I think, a bad friendship. So I guess if you wanted to like sum it up, friendships that are all like centered around yourself, that's a bad friendship. So when the friendship is when the friendship is focused on the other person and like giving to the other person, and that goes both ways, that's a good friendship. But when somebody makes it about them, that's not a good friendship.
Got it. I love your analogy about the swimming, because swimming and some other sports like wrestling, because my kids do wrestling, they're individual sports, but they're team sports, right? Like you run your own individual race, or like my kids are facing like one other opponent, but how you perform helps the team. So the team is always is kind of cheering you on. So like you said, it makes you better. And I think that's such a great analogy for friendship, in that like you want your teammate to do well, because that helps everybody do well, and it's that like you said, that give and take of, we help each other perform better. We make each other better people in the long run. So because the goal is to help the other one get to heaven, kind of thing. Yeah.
And maybe we should describe a little bit that there are different types of friendship. This idea, if anyone ever reads Aristotle talked a lot about, which I've mentioned earlier, he talks a lot about friendship, what is virtuous friendship, what are the types of friendship. So we always talk about like the Greeks, like with the different types of love, but there's also different types of friendship. So I think it's in I don't know if it's Nicomachean or Nicomachean. I'm not going to pretend like I know how to pronounce Greek, but
and I wouldn't correct you either way, because I have no idea.
So Nicomachean Ethics by Aristotle. So what someone should read, I think it's like book 8 or something. He talks about friendship. So I think it's very informative. He knew a lot, considering the fact he lived before Jesus, about virtue. But so anyway, he describes 3 different types of relationships. So the friendships of pleasure, the friendships of utility, and the friendships of virtue. So going into that, this idea is that none of them are bad. Like none of them are bad. I heard once somebody describe it like in more simple terms. It's friendships of or practical friendships of fun, and then friendships of virtue, or friendships of what we were talking about, that true friendship, that making each other better. So like friendships of like utility, or friendships or practical friendships, like you there's something you get out of the relationship between, like, you're friends with someone because I don't know, I know one person gave an example of like their barber, like they go to the barber and they talk to their barber, a lot, but anytime they go, they have like these deep, heartfelt conversations, but that's more like a practical friendship. He's there because of the service that's being bestowed. They're not necessarily like getting together for dinner like every other week or something like that. It's like there's a practical reason that they're in the same place and they connect, but it's, there's more of a practicality to that than there's like that deep virtuousness to it, which once again, not a bad friendship. Not the deepest friendship, but still not a bad friendship. And then there's the friendships of fun, that's like the people you like doing certain things with, or it's like maybe you just like to have fun conversations with this person, or they're a person that you like doing a certain activity with, or or there's somebody like at a party that's just cool to hang out with, or whatever. And once again, not a bad friendship, not the deepest friendship, not like a best friendship, but it's something where you enjoy spending time with this person. That's a fun friendship. Practicality is like we both get, there's something we gain from this practical friendship. And then there's that virtuous friendship, that talking about we want to will each other's good. We want to make each other better. Now, that doesn't mean, there's not practicality to that and that there's not pleasure to that. But it's just this something that's like way deeper than those first two relationships. So I think Aristotle actually calls it perfect friendship.
Ooh.
So, and that it is rare. It's a rare thing. It was very valued by the Greeks, like perfect friendship, because it's this, in some ways, it could be valued more than like a lover's relationship, like a romantic relationship, because it was just as rare. It was like just as selfless. I mean, the ideal would be that in a romantic relationship you have perfect friendship at the same time, but so that it was this thing that was very rare. And I think we refer to this as like best friends, best friends. When you have a best friend, you don't have like 100 best friends. It doesn't make them really best anymore, does it?
It's that quality over quantity.
Yes. So we don't have a lot of best friends. We don't have a lot of perfect friends, but that it is a true gift, like a true treasure, to find someone like that. So
I love that. My two best friends that I met in high school, we just had my girlfriend just turned 39 over the weekend. So we like went to the beach. We surprised her. And that's one of those friendships that like I consider them like my sisters, because I don't have any biological sisters. So they're like the closest thing. And we've known each other for, I'm dating myself now, but they're like, we've known each other for, we did the math, 25 years, which is wild. And I think about that now because like growing up, I felt like it was easy to make friends. Like I watch my 8-year-old and he can make friends wherever he goes. But like as an adult, like I'm not pursuing necessarily what I have with my two best friends, but I find like it's a lot harder to make just any kind of quality friendship with somebody as an adult. Why do you suppose that is?
I would say it's because children are more open. They're more like malleable. Like they're still forming. If you use like an analogy of like clay. So if they're like clay, like fresh out of, I don't know where you get clay from when you make potters, but it's like, it's wet. It's like it sticks together easily. So if like you took 2 like wads of like wet, fresh clay, you could easily just mold them together and they become one. Whereas you leave that clay out for a while and it starts to dry and it starts to, harden. Then all of a sudden you try to stick it together. It doesn't stick really. So I think that's a little bit like childhood to being an adult. And we talk about this in learning all the time, how kids just are more like sponges. They just like, they throw something down and it sticks, because they still have that malleability. They still have that, that stickiness. And they're still kind of forming who they are. They're easily reshaped. So like young people, they can be formed and reshaped to like fit each other a little bit easier. Whereas as adults, we're a little bit more of that hardened clay. We've kind of formed a lot of who we are. And we're not as easily changed. We've kind of found our own, just who we are, what we like, what our callings are, like that. All that stuff is a little bit more solid. So we don't like change as much to fit other people. It's more we have to find people. We have to find 2 hardened pieces that fit together versus like just pretty much almost any soft piece that can like be molded to each other. So I think that's a little bit why. And let's also, brush on the fact that kids aren't busy or like kids are busy, but kids are busy like with other kids. That's the other thing. Because even when you get to high school and stuff, like you're busy. Like, oh, I'm not going to argue. Youth ministry, I know kids are like high school kids. They're busy, but they're busy with other kids like all the time. They're in groups of kids like all the time. People that are their same age, people that are still in that formative phase. Like you spend like 8 to 12 hours of your life when you're a kid with other kids that are your age. like mostly grouped by, especially in extracurriculars, of things that you have in common, like things that you like. So like you're pretty much put in a place where you're like gonna make a friend. Like it's like the perfect environment for making friends. Whereas when you're an adult, like you go out into the world, like you're in the workplace, and a lot of our workplaces, we're like spending time in solitary. Like we're in our offices, or we're zoned in on our work. We're doing like our own things. Versus like even if you only have 2 or 3 people in like your bullpen or whatever, that's not a classroom where there's like 50 people or whatever. And I mean, just when we don't have as much time to go out and do extracurriculars, and everybody, when you're in the open world, once you get out of school, someone could be like 2 to 3 years older than younger than you, or they could be 30 years older or younger than you. You could be working with someone who's just a little bit older, a lot of bit older. And that's another thing. There's just so much more stratification of like difference, like when you're an adult. And then all of a sudden there's so much more people. Like you're in school, you only spend your time with like the same people all the time. Like it's the same. I came up from school, it would be like the same 200 people. Like that was my class. You go out into the world as an adult. I mean, we might work here in the diocesan center, the same 50 people, but in terms of the whole wide world, there's like millions, hundreds of thousands, millions of people. Not that you would all interact with, but so it just it's I don't think kids realize as much that there are so many other people out there. They're just kind of like really focused on,
they have their own microcosm.
Their own micro world.
Yes.
So I would say that's a bunch of different types of things. And maybe because kids are a little bit more open and they're still in that formation phase, though, they're also open to that best friendship of like, hey, we're still not really anything yet. Like we're becoming something, let's become something together. Whereas we as adults, we're more inclined to have all the different types of friendships of like, oh, I have my fun friends. I have my, my practical friends. I have like those few little like best friends, or we even classify them in a bunch of different, we have like work friends, or we have like, if you're an athlete, you'll have like, my sports friends. Like, I will go running with these people, but maybe we're not gonna like go hang out like at the drop of a hat, or I'm not going to call them at 3 a.m. when I have a crisis and be like, dude, we got to wake up in 2 hours to run. Like, why are you calling me? Or I know my mother sometimes also described friends as being for a reason, a season, or for life. So sometimes you have the reasons more of that like practical thing. It's like, there's a reason like we are friends. The season of like, maybe we are really close, but it's just for a certain period of time, like a college friend. But once you graduate college, it's not maybe like the same, or for life, which are like those best friends.
I want to go back to something you said about being busy, because it is so true. When, like you said, like when you're in high school, it just happens, or when you're in elementary school, it just happens because we're malleable, and we're in this microcosm, like we said, of just people who are all the same age, who maybe we're all figuring ourselves out at the same time. But when we're adults, we're inundated. There's so many things that are vying for our attention, whether it's work or family or, the advent of social media, that we're not super available for anything outside of that, or it's a lot harder to make ourselves available. So how can we make ourselves available for a meaningful friendship if we have so many of these other things going on?
Okay. I mean, the first thing I would say to anybody who's like leaving the school life and going into like the world life, one of the lessons I learned is just learning to accept the fact that like your number of close friends is going to be small. Like, you might have like a huge group of friends when you're in school, but like, don't freak out if that gets pared down to like only a handful. Like that's normal. Like you can't be really close with a lot of people. You can only really be close with a handful of people. So if you think that, oh my gosh, I had like 20 friends in this group, but now I only talk to 2 or 3 of them, am I a bad friend? Like, no, don't worry about that. That's completely normal. I had to get used to that. And like when I left college, I had a big friend group. And then I just had like a moment where I was like sad. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I had so many friends, but now we're like not friends anymore. And it's like, well, no, we're not friends. It's just I'm not like everyone's best friend, which is fine, because if I was, my brain would explode. And like the amount that I would have to do to be able to be everyone's really close friend. So I think that's part of it, is that we have so much limited time. You have to realize that it's going to be quality over quantity. Like, you are going to have that one or two people that you are going to rely on, that are going to be those best friends that you will make time for. And just knowing that, I suppose, is a little helpful, number one. Number two, I think all of us recognize with our very best friends, like the friends that we really connect with, that it's not always so much about how often you hang out. It's like that time, it's like, oh, we haven't seen each other in 6 months, and you show up, and then all of a sudden it's like no time's passed. It's like I think that like two bodies with one soul type of like analogy of that, like, oh, like we're instantly still clicking, like no matter what. And so there's that understanding between best friends. But if like you're trying to foster that relationship, I would say that you approach it just like you would approach like a romantic relationship in terms of you should devote time to that person. Like, so like you have a date night, like as a spouse, like, you know, just because you have kids now doesn't mean you shouldn't be still like dating your spouse. So it's like, let's devote date night, like every Friday or every other Friday or something. I think that's the same with best friendship, is you should be like reserve that time. Like, it doesn't have to be as frequent. Like, maybe it's only like once a month or something like that. You like catch up on a phone call, or you go out and go somewhere. It depends on proximity, obviously, but that you make time for them. I think we talk about this with prayer a lot too. It's about making the intentional time, putting on the schedule, being like, this is a priority, and like, I'm not going to move things unless it's like an emergency. That people will respect when you put intentional time. Like, intentional time is important, and it means that you care about whatever it is, whether it's, you know, prayer with God, or, you know, time with your spouse, time with a best friend, time with your kids. Like, there should be intentional time for all the important people in your life.
Creating intentional time is so important. And speaking of intentional time, make sure you set aside some time next week to listen to part 2 of this episode, where we'll be talking about how to make yourselves vulnerable in a new friendship and the effects of social media and isolation on real-world friendships.
Thank you so much for listening. Our goal at the Diocese of Harrisburg is to walk with you on your faith journey. So if this episode resonated with you in any way, the easiest way to show your appreciation is by sharing this program with your network, or by leaving a review on your listening platform. You can also support us financially by making a donation online at hbgdiocese.org/DAC and clicking the Make a Donation button. Thanks again, and we'll see you at church on Sunday.